If they're purely compliance, they come to me. If they have finance and things involved, then they go to the other managers because that takes more time and they look after them.
Okay. So your compliance manager sort of overseeing the smaller boats.
Yeah.
But you are the actual manager for the larger ones.
Yes.
And what else do you do?
I'm also the Deputy Company Security Officer.
The Deputy Company Security Officer. Who is the...
Jason Gilbert.
Oh, Jason Gilbert. He's the actual...
Company Security Officer.
Company Security Officer.
And he's my Deputy DPA.
Okay. And what... Oh, Deputy Company Security Officer. And what does that role entail?
All yachts over 500 gross tons that are commercial, by regulation, have to have a company security officer and an alternative.
Okay.
That has to be qualified to do that role.
And so what does that actually involve?
If they get, primarily, apart from inspections, us being there, answering phone calls from flag states if they have bits of equipment go off. We also, if they have a security incident or something involved in that, we will be the ones that get the phone call and then have to deal with it.
Okay, but
piracy and those type of things.
Piracy, and what about day-to-day stuff like life jackets, life rafts?
That comes under compliance.
Okay, so this is just...
Security as the British know it, not as in security, safety as the French would know it.
Okay, so where do you come from? What's your background?
Military, mainly.
Okay, you're in the services?
About 24 years.
In what services?
Well, there's only one. If I was going to go into yachting, you wouldn't be army, would you? I was in the Navy.
Okay. And what were you? What were you doing in the Navy?
I had a wide, varied, and interesting set of roles. My last seagoing job was as the Chief Officer of Ark Royal. I've also, prior to that, I was a bomb disposal diver, so did diving to 80 metre, blowing things up and looking after a diving team going around the world. I drove on frigates, mine hunters and things like that, which was my seagoing experience. After that, I then taught the captains and chief officers when they're in training to join ships. I was in charge of that course. Then after that, I then moved realistically abroad to the Netherlands to look after the manpower of ISAF as it was then in Afghanistan. I looked after the numbers going in and out and who was going where. And then after that, because I wanted to go to a French-speaking country for my children, I then moved to Belgium, down near the French border, to look after gyms, language schools, theatre, on behalf of the estate that was there, essentially the Supreme Headquarters Allied Powers Europe.
Wow. But your role on Ark Royal, where did that finish? In Portsmouth when she was taken?
When she, just before she was going back to sea again after a refit.
Okay.
So I had 4 years on there, 4.5 years. My first 2 on there was as senior officer of the watch, but also as the diving officer, as the person in charge of emergencies. So unlike yachts, when I go and see those and they have 2 people with breathing apparatus, my maximum numbering was about 80.
And how did you feel when she was scrapped? It was all behind you.
Yeah, done, dusted.
Did you think, because someone I know went to see Ark Royal while she was in Portsmouth, awaiting to be, when they were deciding what to do with it, they didn't know whether to make her a museum piece or whatever. And he had been told that the reason it was being scrapped because of massive corrosion issues.
No, more manpower, time gone. If you don't get rid of the 3 those type of carriers, you will never get funding for the new carriers.
Oh, I see. Okay. But it was hugely uneconomical to run, wasn't it?
They're all economical to run. When you have 4 Olympus gas turbines, that when you put something at 22,000 tonnes at 30 knots, they will drink in an hour essentially the same price as a modern car in fuel.
Okay.
So you're going to burn 23, 24 cubes of fuel in an hour.
Wow.
If you're going max chat doing aviations things.
So 24 tons is that? 24 tons of fuel at what sort of price would you be paying?
Same prices, well, whatever the government buys it for.
Okay.
But you will consume amazing amounts of fuel. Because
Okay, so yeah, you're talking a family car every hour,
Yeah.
25
Yeah.
grand. Okay.
you'll burn, and that's why you generally don't do it very often. Go that way, unless you're going to launch your aircraft and things.
But I guess when you've got how many crew aboard?
Standing crew, stationary crew, or the crew normal, the integrated crew, or the central crew is about 650.
Yeah.
With squadron people, i.e. helicopters or jets, plus admiral staff would go up to about 1,300.
So a lot of folk. Okay. So yeah, so 25 grand in fuel is not your biggest
No,
running expense per hour.
no.
It's
Manpower, aircraft, and everything else that goes with it.
wow, astonishing. So after leaving the services and everything, why did you choose Ocean Independence?
I was already a surveyor when I was in my last 3 years in the military, and I used to do risk assessments on yachts for an insurance company to see what their risk on insurance was. I was also a small yacht surveyor on the La Rochelle on the Atlantic coast, doing some small yachts across there, but wanted to get into management and had one positive that went then negative, because it was just at the time when Camper and Nicholson's went into bankruptcy stroke. So the job that I was due to go into got told no recruiting,
Right.
and then the next one that came along was Ocean Independence.
Okay.
And I was wondering what there was a management company in the middle of Switzerland for. But it was there, so we went there.
And now you know. And so where do you actually live now? In Switzerland?
No, I was in Switzerland for 5 years.
Right.
I then left. I then moved down to St Paul de Vence.
Okay.
For
Yeah.
the last 15 years, I have a house up by Cognac.
Okay. And so that's where you and your family live in.
That's where we holiday at the moment, but that's been our base for when we moved from England, Netherlands, Belgium, France, Switzerland, France. We've always had that as our base there.
Okay. So what do you do on a sort of, I know your role is hugely varied, but what typically do you do on a daily basis?
Daily basis, normally answer about 150 emails,
Yeah.
answer a multitude of questions, and as well as making sure that compliance stays where it should do, and we have new regulations, checking other people's, and doing reports that yachts send in or we send back to yachts. And outside of that, because I'm generally in the office between 5 and 10 days a month, the rest of the month I'm either on yachts, travelling to yachts, visiting, auditing, and checking how they are.
And what, and this is not an Ocean Independence question, this is a personal question. At what size do you think that a yacht ought to have a external manager?
Depends completely on the owner. Something 25 metres, 26 metres, when the owner doesn't want to have anything to do with it but just going enjoying it, then have a manager. They still have a load of regulations they're supposed to follow, and realistically it makes it a little bit more expensive, but then you don't have to worry.
And I mean, one of the things I've been aware of in my time as a broker is sometimes you get captains who are, they have favoured shipyards and favoured suppliers.
Yeah.
And I guess a management company.
We work on, just so it makes it very clear when we talk to everybody, neither myself, Jason, or the other managers, we don't get any commission.
No.
The company doesn't get any commission.
No.
Because we work for the owner.
Yeah.
And as soon as you start having favoured for money, for other things, you cannot offer that service to an owner. Because then you are realistically not being objective, you are being subjective.
But I mean, I have had comments, and I have to say not about Ocean Independence, but I have had comments. I mean, I bumped into a captain who I've known for many years on the quay yesterday, just out here, who was, whose yacht was managed by a company in Monaco, who will remain nameless, who shall remain nameless. And he was saying how they were just a complete pain to deal with, because they got they'd have to ask for 4 or 5 quotes for works. He'd have to format his emails in a certain way before he could send them in, because the management company were obviously just submitting his work to the...
We have a slightly different approach.
Okay.
Doesn't quite. We will do that if we have to do, but then the captain knows, as we know, that is a requirement from the owner.
Okay.
That is the rest of the time. We don't require multiple quotes because we have 35 yachts that we've been at least managing between 5 and 10 years. Therefore, if somebody wants to know how much we have at least 150 samples of how much these things cost. So why go and get 3 quotes when you already have 150 invoices that says how much these things cost?
Yeah.
Because it's just wasting everybody's time then.
Okay. And one other question is, a couple of years ago I was in the sales process.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, it was my first sale with Ocean Independence, so it was about 2 years ago when I joined. And the boat in question was a 28-metre Sunseeker with a pair of Caterpillars in. It was a few years old. It was 3 or 4 years old, 4 or 5 years old. And the oil samples came back showing not dangerous levels, shall we say there was amber warnings on the on some of the readings. Is it because actually the sale fell over as a result of these amber readings in the oil sample? But one thing that it wasn't you, it was another colleague from Ocean Independence told me, is that sometimes these oil companies, the companies doing the testing, have different criteria for different levels of different materials within the...
Depends what you ask them to look for, but they will give you the objective. That's what's in there.
Right.
But it is up to the manufacturer stroke, whoever provided the engine, and the class for saying what they allow, what the limits are. So unless you know what the limits you allowed, they will go by standard across the board.
Right.
So unless you actually go, no, the limitations between this for that one are there, therefore we are good, you will always get that.
Okay, so the traffic light system is useful as a guide, but it's by no means gospel.
And it will generally be across the board. There will be somewhere in some regulation says the minimum should be this or minimum should be that.
Yeah.
But there may be variances on it compared to what the actual requirements specifically for that oil, for those shafts, for that engine, which is always worth a check.
Okay. And just one, I think my second final question is, one thing I'm quite intrigued by is that with the management companies is you actually end up quite often working with, I mean, you're Ocean Independence, you quite often end up working with Camper Nicholson, with Burgess Management, with other management companies.
Some areas, not so much hand in hand with management. We do some. We have interactions naturally because we have to pass them yachts, they pass us yachts. Once different management contracts are signed, we have very little to do. Okay, one of my yachts is employed, the people on there are employed and their operational managers are Burgess.
Right.
And I'm their compliance manager.
Okay, so you do, okay, so that's kind of more the way it works. They take care of one aspect of the yacht.
It's a definite split. Either you're doing this or you're doing that. As soon as it gets overlapped, then it'll get messy and it's not going to work.
Okay. And on a refit, actually, I think my question on refit will live to fight another day because I
You might as well ask it. You might as well ask it and get it out of the way. It's easier that way. Then you're not going to be dwelling on it.
Okay. Well, the question is on refits. If you've got a, let's say a 30-metre yacht which is 10 years old going in for a refit, should you have that who should oversee that?
Depends how much work you're getting done.
If you're having a new interior and some engineering works, not re-engineering, but perhaps a rebuild or something.
Then it comes down to a designer. It would be nice to have a project manager in there, but you've got to remember, if you have a project manager from the yard, he's working for the yard. If you have a diligent captain that has been doing it and he is accurate and he is, he potentially could look after that refit on his own quite happily. There is no reason to say that. If you've got management at that point, it may be the quotes that you look at. He may be there for the initial meeting. He may be there for the closing, milestone meetings, just to check everything is staying where it is. So that you don't have, like some of the yachts go in, They go in, it all gets taken apart, and then the owner's left with 4 times as big a bill as what he went in with, and then everybody gets upset.
Yeah.
So it is containing down to that, and then explaining as you're going along. If it does emerge to more work, that's why. But these things would normally be thought of beforehand as the worst possible case.
Okay, thank you.
There you go.